Hello and welcome to a new game from the Premier Division. This time Leela is playing against Komodo, and this one was one of those nice kingside attacking games. Only that this one was very quick and very brutal, as we'll see immediately. The game started with e4, and after c5, d4 and c takes on d4, we don't have queen takes on d4, but we have c3. The Smith-Morra Gambit, where white is giving up a pawn in order to get a good development, a fast development. And as we can see, white already has a pawn in the center and the knight out. And in return, black of course has the pawn and these two central pawns, 2 versus 1. And white's plan is of course to attack the king very quickly with bishop c4. Attack f7, and then increase the pressure on f7 with moves like knight f3, and then this knight can go to e5 or g5 and attack f7. White can also play bishop queen b3 and put even more pressure on f7. So in view of so many things pressurizing f7, black usually ends up playing e6 here to shield himself on this diagonal, but that leaves d6 weak, and white will try to put his rooks on the open c and d5s and put a lot of pressure. But in this game, instead of the accepted Smith-Morra Gambit, we have the declined Smith-Morra Gambit, and there are many ways in which black can decline the gambit. One way is to play d5, attack here on e4, and then after e takes and queen takes, take on d4. And now black can put pressure on d4 with knight c6, and after knight f3 with e5. And it's a game, both sides have chances. Another way, instead of d5, can be d3. This also declines the gambit and pretends that this pawn on c3 is misplaced because the knight wants to be there. But the most popular way is to play here knight f6, attack e4 with a piece. And of course white doesn't want to play here moves like queen d4 regaining the pawn but losing time after knight c6. White wants to play aggressively. That's why he played the Smith-Morra Gambit. So the best way to continue here is to actually chase this knight with e5 and win some more time. And now after knight d5, the game continued with c takes on d4, and we have now knight c6 and bishop c4 attacking now this knight, knight b6 counterattacking the bishop, and now we have e6, knight f3, and after d6 we reach the end of the book finally, and from here on the engines are on their own. And there are many games in this position. One way to handle this position for white is to resolve the tension between these two pawns immediately with e takes on d6. But after bishop takes on d6, white has this isolated pawn on d4, which it could be used in an attack if white manages to make use of e5 and c5. But in an ending, this isolated pawn, of course, could be a target. And it all depends on what white prefers, really. Instead of taking here on d6, there are other ways. For example, white can castle, but this allows black now to exchange a lot of pieces, and white probably doesn't want to play without the queens if he intended to play the Smith-Morra Gambit. Definitely this is one way to play. Another idea here is to play bishop g5, but of course if white wants to keep chances for an attack and for a win, then best is to play here queen e2 and avoid the immediate queen exchange after pawn takes. And in this position, even though the queen exchange is avoided at this point, after knight b4, black is threatening knight d3 check and also queen d3 when black has another chance to exchange the queens. This is the mostly played variation after queen e2, but in this game, instead of d takes on e5, we have d5. Komodo preferred to close down the center and play this position. Now here in some French defenses, because this is like a French defense with these central pawns locked like this, in some French defenses Leela likes to play here h4 and then h5 and threaten to weaken the dark squares, force h6 and then play rook h3, rook g3 and put pressure on g7. But here, since the c file is already opened up and black already has this knight on c6 putting pressure on d4, Leela preferred to play calmly castles. And now the game continued with bishop e7, knight c3, some normal developing moves, and here the bishop returns now to this diagonal where it likes to be. And now we have knight b4 attacking that bishop, so the bishop draws back, and now we have rook c8. This rook is coming to this open c file, and he has ideas like knight a4 attacking this knight, and if this knight takes, then after bishop recaptures the c file is open, or if white doesn't take, then black can take, and c3 would be a backward weak pawn. So in view of disallowing knight a4, Leela played here queen d1, and now we have a5, and Leela played a3 to send this knight back. And since a4 here is possible for black with the idea to put the knight on a5 and from there to go to c4 or b3, Leela played here a4 herself to stop that, but this weakens this b4 square, so the knight jumps in immediately. And now in this position Leela decided that it's time to expand on the king side, and she played here h4. This is where she has space advantage, so she wants to expand there. And this now gives up this pawn, but taking that pawn is not advised, because after knight takes and queen takes, white would have here knight b5 with the very strong threat of playing rook a3 and rook h3. And especially if black wants to castle kingside, that would be a very bad idea. And if bishop takes here, there's also knight d6 check threatened, and if bishop takes here, then after a takes on b5, this rook a3, rook h3 idea still works, but in addition now this a5 pawn is also attacked. So bishop takes on h4 is not advised here, and Komodo preferred here to play h6. But playing h6 in this position is also very dangerous, especially if he intends to castle kingside. This pawn on h6 is just like an invitation for this bishop to sack himself and open some lines against the black king. So h6 when you're trying to castle kingside usually spells trouble, especially in a position like this with a lot of kingside maneuvering possibilities here for white. The game now continued with g3, and in this position Komodo decided to castle short, which in retrospect of what happened, I'm not sure it was such a great idea. And this castling move now is like a signal to Leela to start attacking the black king. This is like the gunshot at the 100 meters competition. She now just played knight e2 immediately, intending to play knight f4, knight h5 and attack g7 and f6. She is now bringing more and more forces to the king side, and with these two bishops also aimed very nicely against the black king, it looks like she will have a very dangerous kingside attack. The game now continued with bishop e8, anticipating the need for some defensive moves, knight f4, and this now allowed Komodo to use some tricks and win this pawn on a4. It looks like this pawn is well defended by rook and queen, but the truth is that after bishop takes on a4 and rook takes, Komodo has now rook c1 displacing the queen, and now the knight can take on a4 and black just quite simply won a pawn. But of course Leela saw this and she didn't care, because now after knight h5 attacking g7 and f6, she evaluates this position as plus 1.7, and Komodo agrees. He evaluates it at plus 1.4, and it looks like Leela's threats are quite dangerous here. She intends to play b3 and then send this knight back, and then play queen f4, queen g4, and mate on g7. And it's not so easy to defend, because g6 would lose immediately, for example, after queen h6. You can't just chase this knight away from here so easily. Now after knight takes, queen h7 mates. So g6 is not an option. So here Komodo played king h8 with the intention to meet queen g4 with rook g8 when the rook defends g7. But now Leela played here knight h2. And her idea is now to play knight g4 and then sack this knight on g7, remove the defender of h6, and then just take on h6 with the queen and mate. And in view of these threats, Komodo couldn't find a reasonable defense, and he decided to sack the bishop for 2 pawns here with bishop h4. Now, before recapturing the bishop, Leela first played b3 to send this knight back, and now she took on h4. Queen takes, and now both the knight and the pawn are attacked. So Leela played here knight f4 to shield the pawn. And g5 doesn't work, because then the knight can go to e2 and defend the pawn on d4 anyway. So instead of g5, we had knight back to d7. And now king g2. Leela wants to play rook g1 with pressure on g7. And she is not afraid of checks, because after queen g5, this king can go to h3 simply. And all the checking squares are under control. And rook g1 is coming now with tempo on the queen. So instead of queen g5, we had knight c6 attacking this pawn. Leela defends. Komodo continued with rook c8, and now we have rook g1. And Leela's threats are really, really strong now. If allowed, she would like to play here knight f3 to defend these pawns and also harass this queen. And after the queen goes to e7, she can continue with knight h5. And then the pressure on g7 is just maximum. She's now intending king h1 or king f1. And if the rook defends from g8, then rook h1 is very strong. Again, with this idea of sacking the knight on g7 and then taking on h6 with the queen. And if queen f8, to defend that, now knight g7 doesn't work, because queen takes on g7 or rook takes comes with check on the king. However, after king f1 here, knight g7 is really a threat. For example, b6, knight takes. If queen takes, then rook takes on h6, and you can't put the queen on h7, just get mated. The bishop is also attacking there. Best is rook takes, but the king can't really hide. After queen h8 gets mated anyway. So here after rook g1, Komodo decided that it's time to sack another piece to stop Leela's threats, and took here on d4. Queen takes, and now we have queen g5 check, king h1, and now queen takes on e5, going for a queen exchange. But Leela has this trick now, queen d3, threatening mate, forcing basically queen e4 check. And now Komodo gets his queen exchange, but he's also losing another pawn. b7 is also attacked, so we have b6. And being 2 pieces down, of course, is completely hopeless here for Komodo. They exchange a pair of pawns, and now soon the a pawn will be also lost here. And Komodo is trying to advance the kingside pawns, but really nothing works anymore here. The a pawn is gone, and eventually, after enough pawns will fall, the tower will be thrown in and the match will be stopped. Here are the final moves of the game. Even I could win this against Komodo, pretty much. How hard could it be? Here we go now. In a couple of more moves, the game will be adjudicated for Leela as a win. Here they exchange another pair of pieces, and here now after king e5, finally the game is stopped with a win for Leela. A very nice attacking game again, which became very deadly after Komodo castled kingside. A very nice game. In the end, I would like to thank Adolf, Todor, Radu and Guilherme for their contributions to my channel, and of course I would also like to everyone else who is supporting my channel one way or the other. Please subscribe, like and share, and check out some of the other games. Thanks for watching and see you soon. Bye bye.